There are places we go, and people we trust, when we are at our most vulnerable. A hospital. A doctor. We hand them our bodies, our faith, our very lives, with a whispered prayer that they will make us whole again. But what happens when that faith is misplaced? What if the person holding the scalpel isn't trying to save you at all? Dr. Michael Swango. A name few remember, but a name that once held the power of life and death over hundreds. To his colleagues, he was an odd but brilliant intern. To his patients, he was a savior, a quiet, reassuring presence in their darkest hours. But to the families who watched their loved ones inexplicably die under his care, he was something far more sinister. He was a predator hiding in plain sight. And the operating room was his hunting ground. The story begins not with a bang, but with a whisper. A whisper of suspicion in the hushed halls of the Ohio State University Medical Center in 1983. Dr. Michael Swango, a new surgical intern, was charismatic, driven, and seemingly brilliant. He had a meticulous attention to detail, a near photographic memory for medical texts, and a calm demeanor that put his patients at ease. But something was wrong. Patients on his rounds, particularly those with simple routine conditions, were dying. Not a few. Dozens. Patients who had survived complicated surgeries would suddenly, inexplicably, code. Their hearts would stop. Their lungs would fail. And every time, Dr. Swango was there. The first one on the scene. The last one to leave. One nurse, a veteran named Susan, noticed a pattern. It wasn't just the deaths. It was the timing. The way Swango would be the one to administer the medication right before a patient took a sudden turn for the worse. The way he would be found alone with a patient just moments before their vital signs began to crash. It was a feeling she couldn't shake. A knot in her stomach that tightened with every silent gurney wheeled out of a room. Her fears were dismissed. Patients die, she was told. It's a teaching hospital. These things happen. But Susan knew. She started keeping a meticulous, handwritten log. Dates. Times. Patient names. Dr. Swango's presence. She was building a case, not with evidence, but with a terrible, chilling certainty. The final straw came with a healthy young man named Cullen. He had suffered a head injury in a car accident. Nothing life-threatening. He was recovering, stable. Swango was on his shift. He was seen giving Cullen an injection. Within minutes, Cullen was dead. A sudden, violent, inexplicable seizure. An event that, by all accounts, should never have happened. Now, the whispers were getting louder. Other nurses were starting to talk. The chief of surgery, initially skeptical, began to see the numbers. A sudden spike in cardiac arrests. A cluster of deaths that defied medical logic. A pattern was emerging. A dark and terrifying pattern. The pattern of a killer. To understand the monster, you have to look at the man. Who was Michael Swango before he ever put on a white coat? The answer is a study in contrasts. On the one hand, a brilliant student. An Eagle Scout. The valedictorian of his high school class in Quincy, Illinois. A clean-cut, polite young man who was admired by his peers and doted on by his mother. He seemed destined for greatness. But beneath the surface, there were cracks. He was obsessed with death. Not in a morbid Gothic way, but in a clinical, almost academic way. He would tell unsettling jokes about murder and suicide. He would collect photos of car crashes and crime scenes. He was fascinated by the mechanics of death, the way a body fails, the precise moment life leaves the eyes. As a paramedic before medical school, he was already displaying this dark duality. He was a hero, praised for his calm demeanor and life-saving actions at emergency scenes. But he was also a suspect. Several patients he transported to the hospital were later found to have died from mysterious circumstances. A seemingly random, cruel twist of fate. A coincidence. Or so everyone told themselves. The darkness wasn't just in his fascination with death. It was in his cruelty. A cruelty that was often hidden, but occasionally flashed to the surface. His first wife, a woman named Carol, would later describe his chilling control, his bizarre rituals, and his sudden terrifying outbursts of rage. She recalled a time he brought home a poisoned cupcake and a can of rat poison, laughing about how he would love to watch a person die. She dismissed it as a dark joke. But the memory haunted her. His personal life was a mess of failed relationships and strange behavior. He was a loner, a man who seemed to have no real friends, only acquaintances. He was a master of superficial charm, a chameleon who could blend in and project whatever image was required. But underneath, there was nothing. A vacuum. A cold, empty space where empathy should have been. The perfect soil for a monster to grow. The investigation at Ohio State began with a whimper, not a roar. Initially, it was a quiet, internal review. A committee. A series of closed-door meetings. Swango was asked to resign. He was told it was for discrepancies in his file. The hospital wanted to avoid a scandal. They wanted the problem to just go away. And for a while, it did. Swango, the brilliant doctor, was now unemployed. He was facing professional ruin. But he was a master of manipulation. He was intelligent. He appealed the decision. He went to the media, claiming he was the victim of a jealous, petty vendetta. He was charismatic, and he was convincing. The hospital, wary of a public fight, backed down. They let him go quietly. He was given a clean slate. And a new hospital to stock. Swango didn't stop. He couldn't. He was a repeat offender. He found a new job as a doctor in a small-town hospital in Illinois. Once again, the pattern began. Unexplained deaths. Sudden, baffling cardiac arrests. The nurses noticed. The doctors noticed. But still, nothing was done. No one wanted to believe it. It was easier to blame bad luck, or poor health, or just the inevitable tragedy of life. The first real turning point came not from a hospital, but from a mundane, everyday crime. Swango was caught forging a prescription for a powerful drug, a sedative called curare. He wasn't a drug addict. He didn't want it to get high. He wanted it because it was a perfect murder weapon. It paralyzes, it stops breathing, and it leaves no trace in an autopsy. A brilliant, terrifyingly calculated choice. He was arrested. He was charged. The truth was starting to come out. Not about the murders, not yet, but about the man. He was found guilty of the forgery. And this time, he went to prison. The medical establishment, finally, took action. His medical license was revoked. The man who had once been a brilliant hope was now a convicted felon. For a brief moment, it seemed like the nightmare was over. But they had only caught a glimpse of the beast. They hadn't seen the whole monster. To a digital psychologist, Michael Swango is a textbook case. He is a high-functioning psychopath. The definition is crucial. A psychopath is not just a killer. It is a personality disorder characterized by a lack of empathy, a profound inability to feel remorse or guilt, and a manipulative, deceitful nature. They are often intelligent, charming, and adept at hiding their true selves. Swango was all of these things. His behavior wasn't random. It was a carefully orchestrated performance. He would present a calm, empathetic face to his patients and colleagues. He was the perfect doctor. The one you would want at your bedside. But it was a mask. A brilliantly crafted mask. And behind it, there was only a chilling void. The murders themselves weren't about rage or revenge. They were about control. Power. Swango was a man who felt powerless in his own life. He was a nobody from a small town. But in the hospital, he was a god. He held the power of life and death in his hands. He could decide who lived and who died. And he did so with a chilling clinical detachment. The motive was not some grand, theatrical evil. It was small. It was petty. It was about the thrill of a secret, about the rush of being the master of a hidden universe. The murders were a performance, and the operating room was his stage. The patients were not people to him. They were objects. They were props in his private, terrifying drama. The pathology of a killer like Swango is not a mystery. It's a tragedy. A tragedy for the victims, of course. But also a chilling reminder that evil can wear a suit and a tie. It can wear a white coat. It can be brilliant. It can be charming. And it can be hiding in plain sight. Swango was released from prison in 1987. But the story was far from over. He was a convicted felon with a revoked medical license. He should have been stopped. But he was a master manipulator. He changed his name. He falsified his documents. He found a new country and a new hospital to continue his macabre work. He was a ghost in the medical system, a killer with a clean slate and a trail of bodies in his wake. He worked as a doctor in a small town in Zimbabwe. The pattern, once again, repeated itself. Unexplained deaths. A sudden spike in cardiac arrests. The hospital staff, initially in awe of the brilliant American doctor, began to grow suspicious. The whispers started again. But this time, they were in a different language. The end came not through a brilliant detective, but through a patient's family. A distraught family member, grieving a loved one who had died under Swango's care, had a moment of clarity. She remembered the name from a newspaper article years before, a name she had seen in a foreign magazine. She began to connect the dots. The name, the pattern, the uncanny timing. The FBI, who had been quietly building a case against him for years, was now involved. They were able to connect the dots across states, across countries. The puzzle pieces, once scattered and seemingly unrelated, were now fitting together. The story of a charming, brilliant doctor who was a serial killer. The story of a man who had murdered dozens, perhaps hundreds, of people. The story of a killer hiding in a white coat. In 1997, Swango was arrested. Not for murder, not yet. He was arrested for an old charge of lying on a job application. It was a technicality, but it was enough. The net was closing. The ghost was finally caught. The case was built slowly, meticulously. A case of murder. The families of the victims, the nurses who had been so afraid, the doctors who had been so blind, all came forward. The whispers became a roar. He was finally brought to trial. Faced with the overwhelming evidence, with the dozens of bodies, with the chilling pattern of his work, he did not fight. He pleaded guilty. Not to all of them, but to a handful. Enough to ensure he would never walk free again. Enough to give the families a measure of closure, a small, cold comfort. He was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. The case of Dr. Michael Swango is more than a true crime story. It is a chilling reminder of the fragility of our trust. It is a testament to the power of intuition, and the terrible consequences of ignoring our gut feelings. The nurses who saw the pattern. The families who refused to accept the official story. They were the true heroes. But it also leaves us with a question. A moral dilemma that lingers long after the final credits. How many more are there? How many more wolves in sheep's clothing are hiding in plain sight, in positions of power and trust? In the quiet halls of a hospital? In the classrooms of a school? In the corridors of power? Michael Swango was an extreme case. But the pathology, the lack of empathy, the profound need for control, it exists everywhere. It is a darkness that is far more common than we would like to admit. And the only way to combat it is to never stop looking. Never stop questioning. Never stop trusting your own instincts. Because sometimes, the most dangerous people in the world are the ones we are taught to trust the most. The story of Dr. Michael Swango is a terrifying cautionary tale about the darkness that can hide in plain sight. If you found this story compelling, and if you believe that these stories need to be told, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the chilling, real-life mysteries that challenge everything we believe about the human mind. The stories are out there. We just have to be brave enough to look for them.
Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe for more gripping true crime breakdowns, mysteries, and criminal psychology stories, only on Twisted Case.